Hello everyone and welcome to Services Week 2021. My name is Agla Shaw. I work for the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, and I'm happy to welcome you to our fifth and final COVID-19 project showcase about sharing vulnerability data to support residents. So you will know this session is part of Services Week, and it is a cross-organizational event, and it is annual. So I believe this is the third installment of this event, and we usually discuss what good services, what bad services look like, and how we can help each other. So this year we have 57 actually sessions, not 46 as it says, organized by 34 organizations, and you can see a link on your screen that will take you to the full agenda. We do have a code of conduct for the week, so by participating you agree to the code of conduct. It's all kind of what you would expect, but really what it says, just pretty much if you're providing feedback, make sure it's constructive feedback, and try to be appreciative of other people's work. So yes, this session is being recorded. None of the people asking questions like in the chat, don't worry, your names won't be seen, but you will be able to view recordings of this event on YouTube, so YouTube by Services Week, and local digital YouTube channel as well. So please do share your thoughts and impressions and any kind of opinions on social media using hashtag Services Week or hashtag Local Digital COVID-19 Challenge, or even hashtag Fix the Plumbing. You can do this on chat, on Slack, on Twitter, anywhere else that you like. But yeah, we would love to hear from you and about your thoughts. And finally, if you would like to provide some more anonymous feedback about this session or about Services Week overall, there's a link, I believe, now in the chat that you should be able to see and follow. So please do take the time to fill it out and let us know your thoughts about the session and the week. And finally, as mentioned, please do ask questions in the chat. We have two amazing presentations today, and they will definitely be able to answer any kind of questions you have. There are no silly questions. So anything you want to find out about either of the projects, do ask them in the chat. So really quickly how today is going to work. I'll give you a brief overview of the local digital program, and after that I'll hand off to Tony from Huntingdonshire District Council, who will tell you all about their SENA projects, and he will tell you what SENA stands for as well, which will be followed by Paul from Sedgemoor District Council, who will tell you all about their SAVI project as well. So as you can see, we like our abbreviations when it comes to vulnerability data sharing. This session should be around an hour long. We'll aim to wrap up by 4 p.m, maybe a bit sooner, but I hope you are able to stick with us for the whole thing. Now, before I hand off to the project, like really quick background to our work and the declaration. So at MHCLG, we support local government efforts to work together, and we do this in 3 ways. So by funding and supporting collaborative projects to solve common problems, by providing training for council staff to develop their digital capabilities, and by bringing people together to share their work and learn from each other. So on your screens, I'm sure you can see 5 commitments of the local digital declaration, and our funded projects help us show how these principles, these commitments work in practice. So you can read the whole thing on our website, localdigital.gov.uk. But in a nutshell, the declaration is a shared vision for the future of local services, and it's something we collectively aspire and hold ourselves accountable to in our work on digital data and technology in local government. Just a quick overview as well, a bit of a history, I guess, to local digital declaration. So back in 2018, 45 organizations from local, central and sector bodies like the LGA co-authored the declaration, and so far 223 councils have signed it. So signatories get some of these great benefits I've just mentioned, like access to free training courses, or they can also apply for funding via the local digital fund. And if you're not already signed up, please go on our website and read a little bit more. It might be of interest. Now, obviously, you know, as we said, these are the COVID-19 projects. So We all know that this year has been really challenging for local governments, and they have actually been at the forefront of COVID-19 response and recovery. So to support this sector, that's why we launched the local digital COVID-19 challenge in the summer. And the purpose of the fund was to give funding to new or existing work that is responding to a pressing needs, COVID-19, that could deliver tangible output within around 2 months, and that can be reused by other councils. So overall, we received 123 applications, but we ended up funding 12 projects in areas ranging from information sharing to community engagements and better working practices. So today you are going to hear from 2 of these projects. And they've been working very hard to ensure that councils can have a way to share vulnerable resident data during the pandemic and in the future. So without any further ado, I will hand off to Tony from Huntingdonshire District Council, who will tell you all about their projects.
Hopefully, good afternoon, everybody. Now I've remembered to unmute myself. And I'm going to talk to you about the SENA project, because every project needs an acronym. And so this stands for the Societal Early Need Application Project. And this is sort of our end of phase 1 recap, which is sort of happens to merrily coincide with Services Week. So first of all, a bit about me. Unfortunately, you need to put up with this. I'm the Assistant Director for Transformation at Huntingdonshire District Council, and I'm sort of responsible for sort of change, technology, and a bit of strategy and leadership in the council. And then a bit about Huntingdonshire itself. We are a large district within Cambridgeshire, and we have a really close working relationship with 2 of our neighbouring districts, South Cambs District Council and Cambridge City District Council, and we have a shared IT service between us, which means we're in a very interesting place to be able to sort of test ideas and then scale them. The other thing of interesting note about data sharing and information governance is we are a district authority, which means we're a 2-tier system. So we have to have a relationship with our Cambridgeshire County Council in order to work out sort of really how to really affect the citizen, which puts us at a slight disadvantage, as we'll talk about later. So this is the wall of logos that every good presentation needs to have about everybody we're working with. So as I say, we're working with Cambridgeshire County Council. We work very closely with Peterborough City Council as well. They are our neighbours just to the north. So as a city, what they do impacts us, and what we do impacts them. There's sort of a smattering of other logos from some of our technology partners of PlaceCube and Unboxed. And in this bid, we've also worked closely with the Greater Manchester Combined Authority and Dave Kelly, if he's watching. We're wishing him well at the moment. We're also, alongside this work that MHCLG have funded, we're also doing a lot of work with the University of Cambridge and the clinical commissioning group within Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, sort of to try and close the gap between medical and health and social elements. And we've also got some research grant work in with the Medical Research Council and hopefully the National Institute for Health Research. And we're also part of a Nesta Upstream collaboration. So this is sort of all of around stuff that we're doing. And now I'm going to sort of focus in on the SENA project itself. So what is the problem we were trying to solve with this, which was how can we mitigate the impact of COVID without creating dependency and going bankrupt? So on the sort of left-hand side of the slide, you'll see some sort of demand statistics around what was affecting us and what we've seen since COVID hit, which is sort of an over 200% increase in universal credit claimants and the same sort of level of increase in food bank demand over time. And you'll see that the food bank demand sort of lagged by 6 months the initial hit on COVID. And our sort of starting premise from all of this was that people have some innate capacity to cope with bad things, but eventually they're going to burn through that capacity, which is why UC claimants sort of went up straight away. That was a thing you could do. And then people moved into needing this wider support later as the sort of the impact of the crisis really hit. Now, The interesting thing is on the right is sort of some high-level analysis of the 2008 financial crisis, which in very tiny graphs, but I'll précis what they say, is that it took about 7 years for the demand on public sector services to go back to pre-crisis levels after the 2008 financial crisis. So we're potentially sitting in for the long haul of another 6 odd years of dealing with the impact and fallout of COVID. However, to make situations worse, our funding is worse and our demand has been growing ever since. So this is what we led to a position in Huntingdonshire of we can't do more of the same. We've got to work smarter. We've got to work better. And this is what sort of we took to MHCLG, which is what funded the sort of project around prevention, prediction, and early engagement. So that sort of those are some themes I'm going to talk about now of what we did. So the starting point for all of this was we naively believed that we could predict when crisis would hit, and sort of by observing leading indicators, and so working out how we could engage with a household before it hits a really sticky patch and help them through this with sort of like gentle nudges. And sort of the key example we sort of said was from talking to some of the responsible organizations and the housing authority providers near us. They sort of, one of them said, we don't have such a huge problem with rent arrears because as soon as somebody cancels their direct debit, we're on the phone to them, we're finding out what's happening, and we're engaging with them early. And that's sort of the model we took into this, and we did some theoretical work and some reading, and we tried to come up with an idea of like, so you're going along, you have a natural capacity, negative events eat some of that capacity, and eventually you're going to be at risk, and then that is the point where crisis develops. So if we can understand you before you get to crisis, we can help nudge you, signpost you, and engage with you in a better way. To sort of test this, we created a risk model based on some academic papers we'd found on the Holmes-Rahe stress scale. We then created 70 life journey maps for people, and this is where we've sort of taken a household and we've talked to them and we've said, like, tell us everything that's happened to you in your life. And then we work out who they've interacted with, which public sector bodies, which charities they've interacted with, and sort of put a cost on some of that. And also sort of put this impact from our stress scale on that to try and work out what their stress score looked like as through time. So we could go, this was the point where we knew enough about somebody to engage with them and hopefully put them off a course of crisis and into a sort of a better path. And then as a result of sort of COVID and the CEV sort of caring for the clinically extremely vulnerable, we made a load of outbound calls to probably about 20 odd % of the sort of households in our district to ask them, okay, COVID's happened, what do you need? Tell us what you're like, and sort of test some of our predictive measures. What we learned that risk modeling is extremely hard. And we were probably woefully naive when we said, yes, we can come up with a predictive model. Doesn't mean we're not going to try it some more, but it's hard. So our initial model didn't work all that well, but what we did observe was a sort of a snowball effect, that it matters less what the event is, but more the length of time between events. And I think it was, if you had 3 bad things happen to you within 18 months, you are highly likely to end up in crisis. And so we're not quite sure what we're going to do with this, but this is the learning we've got so far. And we also think we failed to adjust for resiliency factors. So we asked people what had happened to you, and we saw whether they'd end up with the crisis, but we didn't ask about their context. Were they embedded in a community? Was it a thriving community? Did they sort of have wider resources they could draw on? So we're going to try again. And this is some of the work we're doing with the MRC Research Council and the NIHR to try and create a better predictive model. The other thing we observed was from all of our outbound calling and our engagement, the high risk groups that we know about and as public sector bodies we deal with quite often, they're affected by COVID, clearly, but they're not necessarily affected by it as much as we thought. The people without jobs before COVID, they still don't have a job. Nobody, because there's just less jobs to go around now. But that hasn't really impacted them as much as we might have feared. However, there is this new group of newly vulnerable people that have historically never engaged with the public sector, and they are being impacted by COVID. And so part of what our learning from this is we're trying to work out how to reach these people to ensure that they engage early, get the services that will support them such that they don't end up in a time of crisis. The other thing one of the key themes was we're trying to prevent things from happening. So once we've predicted something might happen in the future, we want to take actions that stop that path from occurring. So we're trying to create better solutions to engage with households early on issues so they can get support, and it's support not just from us as a district council or county council, but from charities and the wider community. So to defray some of the costs the public sector is going to suffer. And to do this, we created a single front door for all sorts of services, so not just what we offer. And that was our We Are Huntingdonshire portal, which is one of the simplistic, most simple websites we've ever created, but it was very need orientated. So it was based on not what do we offer, but what problems might you be suffering from, and then driving people through a series of really simple steps to get them to a solution that might help them. So we sort of like said, what problems do you suffer from? Debt. Sort of what thing might you want? Oh, we need some financial support. Well, here's some benefits you could apply for, and here's also sort of like the money advice service to help you with your budgeting. We also we worked with one of our user research partners, Unbox, to conduct a set of user research sort of examples to work out how best to get the message across to people. So we know we want people to do something, but people aren't always all that keen on listening when they get yet another bland and boring email from their council telling them they need to put their bins out on a Wednesday, not a Tuesday. And so this sort of falls by the wayside. So we wanted to create more engaging messages. So we've tried to do this both via phone and via email, and we've done elements of A/B testing to then try and see how people have reacted, whether they've sort of come off positively or negatively to this, and try to trace them back from an email engagement through to We Are Huntingdonshire, following their sort of click trail through the We Are Huntingdonshire portal, and then seeing if they've jumped on off to sort of a provider's website. And we've tested different types of messaging, where to put them into the system, sort of like, do we put them at the front page or into a specific debt related page or into a specific service related page? And we're currently gathering that data, so not all of the analysis is available quite yet. But the idea here is to work out how to resonate, how to send a message to somebody that might not know that we have something they can offer, but that engages them and encourages them without making them dependent upon us. So what have we learned? We've learned that citizens are surprisingly receptive to being signposted to non-public sector bodies. In most of our outbound calling to response to COVID and the clinically extremely vulnerable, we didn't actually give people services. We just signposted them to a community group or a food bank or a charity, and they were really happy that we'd spoken to them, that we'd taken time out to contact them, and they were more than happy to then take it with that sort of first initial push, take the rest of the steps themselves and to engage with these other bodies. Digital engagement appears promising even across the sort of traditionally harder to reach groups. So some of the elderly are traditionally seen as slightly digitally disadvantaged, but we've been managing to engage with them and we're getting relatively good traction. People are listening when we say things, as long as we say something interesting and in an engaging manner. But we have problems tracking this all the way to outcomes. So we can see when somebody's followed our link trail off to an external website or a service provider, but we don't necessarily know whether that has resulted in them taking up the service from a charity or a community group, and whether that's actually helped them with their outcome. And so we can take them so far, but we don't have all the data all the way through. We've also learned, in the least shocking statement I'm going to make in this presentation, that information governance is extremely painful and extremely slow to do anything with. We're just about merging our data within Huntingdonshire District Council, but that's pretty hard as we don't really have universal views of citizens. People sort of don't match between systems, and then getting useful data from third parties has appeared near impossible. We have some, COVID has given us some ability to share data with county council, and county council share data with us. But to make this sort of a prolonged approach, we really need to work out how to get these data sharing agreements in place. And it's sort of looking like the only way to do that is sort of consent based, which is almost your last chance saloon of doing any information governance, is getting consent, because it's a whole bunch of stuff to manage. And as I alluded to at the start, being a two-tier authority makes this harder. So for us to combine social care data with education data with council tax data means jumping through a lot of different hoops, whereas if you're in a unitary, you sort of have a leg up on us as you've already got all of your data under one organizational roof. I ran out of my thesaurus last night, so I couldn't actually think of anything that began with P that was about coordination. So we'll just pretend it's got a silent P in the start of this. So what we've also planned to do was try and coordinate our efforts. So all too often, the at-risk and the vulnerable households are getting fractured approaches from the different silos within local government, within the community, and within central government. So we're trying to create a better way of sort of where we can not necessarily provide services, but help manage the engagement of multiple different service providers into a single household. And that's sort of working with charities and community groups around better data sharing. Now, some of what we've done is work with the Savvy project, but I'm not going to talk about that because Paul, who's going to be up next, would object to me stealing his thunder. So I'm going to stay stum on that and let him talk about what we've done with them, as it gives a better lead in. The other thing we've done is we created a Power Apps-based solution to try and record all of the different support we were giving to households, to try and manage it and take feedback from sort of charities, community groups, and county council to say, this is what we thought this household's need was, this is the services that have been delivered, how did that go? And we've tried to create a solution to start this coordination approach. What we learnt some stuff that with Savvy, and they're going to tell you about that because I already don't want to spoil them. We've also learned, and as Egli sort of mentioned at the start, the whole fix the plumbing. What we learned is you need a plumber when you want to fix some plumbing, and we've tried to put a technology solution together ourselves using our internal team and our internal resources, and we think technology is a big assist for this, but we have to choose between like bodging something together quickly or doing something sort of more formal slowly, and that doesn't really sit in the agile sweet spot of moving quickly and iterating at pace. So at the moment we've decided that we need to go out and we need to get a partner to help us in this technology space, create something that works and is easy and can be adopted within our organization quickly. Power Apps has many good sides and many bad sides, and we've determined that it's not quite right for us right now. So that's sort of a whistle-stop tour of what we've done, and I'll be taking questions in a second about this. Hopefully somebody is out there in the audience asking them. And now I sort of thought we'll talk about what next. So for the project, we're going to continue to work with MHCLG. We're talking to them about what next in terms of how we move the project forward. We want to work to understand how we can get the data we need directly from citizens. We've talked about the risk modeling, we've talked about the prediction and the information governance challenges. And we reckon that the best solution for us is to ask people for more information up front, such that we can then use that as our starting point for doing our prediction and trying to link them to the services that will be the most useful to them. We're going to do further user research on our messaging. So we know we need people to tell us some stuff, and we know we want to tell them some stuff, but we've got to do that in the most effective way we can, ideally coupled with gaining consent for information governance, both for us to share their details with delivery organizations such as charities, and then for charities to share back with us the outcome of that engagement. And I've spoken about charities in the community sector a lot, and we actually want to do more service design work with them going forward to create a much more holistic ecosystem that works for them and works for their people and their ways of working, as well as for us. What next for you? If any of you are interested, get in touch with me. That's my email address, and we can share some of the direct learnings about the templates and the scripting and the messaging and what worked and what didn't work. Happy to, and sort of our biggest thematic here is we don't think the public sector can like solve the impact of COVID by itself. So my big takeaway for you guys, for everybody, would be to go and talk to charities in the community sector and become a much more holistic offer in this place. If any of you have any bright ideas about risk modeling and vulnerability modeling, well, we've tried a few times. Maybe we've bunted and we're at first base, and that's my bad baseball analogy for the day. And we're happy, would love to hear about anything you've got on. And I'd like to personally encourage you to lobby everybody you could find to get better information governance support around making smarter decisions. We all talk about data-driven decision making, but when somebody who's not talking to you has half the data you need to make that decisions, it becomes quite challenging. I think that's sort of it from me. There's about a 15 or 20-second delay between you chatting and us seeing. So hopefully we'll move to questions now. And I think I'll hand back to Eglė.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for your presentation. We already have one comment saying this is really interesting. And we do have a couple of questions. I would say they're quite similar in terms of what they're asking, so I'll just read them out both at the same time. So the first one is saying, how do you do outbound call without appearing spammy? And the second one is, when you do provide help, how do you prevent it from becoming patronizing, especially for vulnerable groups who have been disadvantaged for quite some time?
So I will give you sort of the summary view, but some of the details of exactly how this is handled, I need to sort of go back and sort of, please email me, and then I'll talk directly to the team leads of the people that are making the outbound calling, and we can get you the sort of like the feedback from on the ground. How to do outbound calling without appearing spammy, in that we didn't call that often. So we called once and we tried to engage with them, and then we sort of we proceeded with a physical letter because that was what our politicians wanted, alongside some email and some digital engagement. I think the feedback was generally well received, and when we did the outbound calling, we tranched it. So we took all the data we had on everybody, sort of like assisted bin collections, single person discount on council tax, and we tried to merge this to create a segmented view of our population. And we started with the most vulnerable, which was some of the CEV, some of the shielding list that we'd got given from county, and sort of the homelessness prevention data, and we called them first, and then we slowly sort of moved our way up the tranches. And I think that made us have a targeted response, and I don't believe we came across as spammy, but I'm not sure exactly what else we did to prevent that. And the second question was on, I've forgotten.
Just
not being patronizing.
Yes, yeah.
Largely, I think that was sort of some of the focus of our call scripts. Was we asked people how they were. We didn't give them a list of like, do you want any of this? It was like, how are you? What needs do you have? Are you okay? And if they said yes, we sort of left them alone. And if they said no, then we engaged with them and we tried to work it through their need, not our service. And then that is how we resulted on the handovers to sort of some of the community groups and some of our own teams to follow that up with. One from Atul, who's decided that there's not enough questions from the audience to add one himself. So that is, what types of vulnerability will you focus on intervention for, and where you think you can make the biggest difference to begin with? At the moment, we think economic hardship is going to be the absolutely biggest. So households that previously were getting by okay in some form of, in sort of like in maybe 1 or 2 mixed employment jobs. Now, if some of that work has gone away, they'll have just dropped below the sort of sustainability line. That is where we think the biggest long-term impacts of COVID are going to be felt. And that sort of, we're talking about, luckily we're coming out of winter, but if there's still this next winter, we think fuel poverty will be a very big thing. And it's sort of some of these economic factors that are really going to bite the household level. And we've got to try and work out how to support them and how to help them sort of address this, and then look at, in the much longer term, future employment and future employability.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tony. We don't have any more new questions for you, so I think we'll just wrap up your presentation here. And Paul, we're ready to hand off to you. So Paul Davidson from Sedgemoor District Council will talk to you about the Savvy project now.
Right, hello. Just give me a moment to share my screen. Ooh. Right, tell me that you're still there and that you're hearing me.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, excellent. Okay, right. Well, thank you for giving us an opportunity to showcase what we've been doing over the past few months. Yes, I'm Paul Davidson. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at Sedgemoor District Council. That's one of the 4 districts in Somerset, and our project is called Savvy. And that stands for, because as Tony says, you've got to have an acronym, the scalable approach to vulnerability via interoperability. But we like that word, of course, because it gives it, you know, it also tells you that it's about being savvy, which is savvy with data, practical knowledge, making good decisions and judgments based on good access to information and insight. Now, this project is an iStand UK project, so I should just mention what that is. iStand UK, it's a coming together of some councils and some government departments on a mission, really, just to promote how data standards can improve local public services. So we do all sorts of things, all sorts of projects running. iStand UK is actually hosted and led by Tameside Council. So officially, this is a Tameside Council project, and I think Shelley from Tameside might be in the audience today. Let's see if she asks me a tricky question. So that's why you're seeing the branding of iStand UK. So for this, this all for us started just as we were coming out of the first wave of COVID-19, and we had an iStand UK executive steering board, and of course the topic was how did we get on with that, and councils were saying how they found the experience of trying to find quickly and at pace the people and households who might need help, perhaps not those who clinically need help, because we felt at that time they were being picked up nationally, but all the other types of reasons why people might need local support. So here's what Somerset was saying. If you've got a chance to read that, they were saying it's hard to match data together, struggling with common identifiers for things. Data quality was up and down. Quite a lot of data was coming in spreadsheets or just free text. Geographies didn't line up. They were just saying how hard it was to try and piece all this data together and make some sense of it. And similarly, here's North Yorkshire saying again at that board similar kind of things. They were saying they were struggling with different formats and standards of data coming at them. They were also saying how hard it was just to find who had what data. in the first place. So certainly there was a feeling that although councils did find vulnerable people, we if there were standards in place and a proper known process and all that quickly getting the information governance together, we could probably have found people quicker and and improved people's lives as a result. So, but the mood of the iStandard UK board wasn't just that we want to provide standards that help councils deal with an emergency like COVID-19, because hopefully we'll put that behind us at some stage. But I think what we were saying in iStandard UK was that whole business of finding vulnerable people and then supporting them, assessing their needs and supporting them. That happens in a number of settings. So we wanted to compare with the experience of COVID-19 with other types of vulnerability, and in particular, top of people's agenda was homelessness prevention. So we spoke with some other organisations. There's Crisis, Bristol City Council. They were a trailblazer for homelessness prevention. Asking what their experience of trying to use data and interoperability to tackle vulnerability. And again, you're seeing some of the response for that. So the problem appeared to be that when councils need to identify vulnerable people in households, and having identified them, assess people's needs, and then lead that multi-agency and community response, that's going to involve blending a lot of attribute type information, and it's also going to involve a kind of real-time experience of updating actions on the ground. And what councils found was it's hard to get to that data. It's hard to even know who's got it. It's certainly hard to share it from an information governance point of view. Some of it can be hard to join up just from a data matching point of view. And in particular, that action tracking, I think Tony was getting at this, trying to action track in real time across many agencies. That again is going to require standards and interoperability. So that led us to the Savvy project, and I'm pleased to say that the local digital unit from M8CLG took our bid for a project and gave us what we're now calling phase 1 funding in hope that that we might not just end up at phase 1. And that was particularly about proposing those national data standards that could improve a locality's ability to find and support people who are vulnerable. And when we say data standards, we wrap quite a lot up in that. Certainly it is the kind of acronyms of data entities and terminologies and vocabularies and fields and so forth, but it's also about the process, a repeatable process for coping with vulnerability, and it's also about the data flows, which data it can be used for what, and it's also about the information governance techniques to make all that work. So we wrapped quite a lot up into what we were meaning by data standards, and we also want to remind ourselves constantly that this isn't just about pretty pictures and diagrams. We ultimately want to be measured in how this results in reduced hardship for people and households. So our bid wasn't just Tameside. We have down the left the councils that particularly are regular contributors to the iStandard UK board. So everybody kind of signed up. All these people on the left, they all took part in all of our workshops and contributed. And indeed on the right, you're seeing a whole list of government departments and national agencies. And I'm looking down the list there. Yes, they all took part in our workshops. So we're very grateful to the contributions and participation that we had. If people hadn't have come forward, and of course it was a tricky time for everybody, then we wouldn't have learnt anything. We wouldn't have had a project. Now in particular, the project, well, we're very pleased to be working with Huntingdonshire District Council. So all the stuff that Tony was talking about, that's what we are about, trying to meet their asks. Huntingdonshire need access to data, so they need data in a common format, guidance about how data flows around the process, how it might sit in a data schema. But they also need, as Tony was particularly picking up, are the a repeatable information governance framework within which to establish what data can be reused to tackle what vulnerability. So that's something that seems to be missing at the moment, and we're particularly working that through. They also talk about a trust framework in that data is going to be flowing around all of those other delivery partners that Huntingdon Shire talk about and out into the community. So it's about making sure that data is flowing around organisations safely, securely, and legally. Now, we also use the digital marketplace to appoint a company called Bodvok, and they were helping us with the standards. So using the digital marketplace, that was a good experience for us. And we're particularly keen to work with industry. So we've had workshops with Tech UK, because ultimately our standards will get traction if they find themselves appearing in private sector suppliers' products. So we're keen to work in the open, as we have been with Tech UK, show them what we're doing and get reactions from potential suppliers to local authorities that might contain those standards. So in particular, I mentioned that we started off by running lots of workshops. We had workshops particularly around what was the COVID-19 experience that councils had. Then we had separate workshops, particularly around homelessness, but we were looking for common patterns, common processes between those two. We particularly had workshops about information governance, and then we had workshops particularly looking at data matching, and particularly that at a property level. So when we in this phase one, we've been looking at COVID-19 and homelessness, but the whole point and the reason we talk about it being a scalable approach to vulnerability is that it should scale up and out into other vulnerability settings. So some of these Tony was talking about, the kind of financial distress type of situations, loneliness, mental health, school readiness, and so forth. So we're keen to try and to push this out and make sure that what we've come up with works in all sorts of different settings. So some of that learning, if we talk about COVID-19, here are some of the data attributes that councils told us they used during the COVID-19 outbreak to try and find people who, to draw this stuff into a bit of a risk index, run some kind of scoring algorithm over it to try and find the people with combinations of indicators that would suggest that these people might be in some kind of risk, and it would be sensible to reach out and make that call. You're seeing some of the things that Tony was talking about there. So there's assisted bin collection, single people for council tax, if you get the idea. And the point is, much of this information all comes from different organisations and different systems. Same approach to homelessness, but to different vulnerability. It's a different list, but the same kind of idea. This is indicators that are collected within source systems. Can that data be reused from a risk vulnerability point of view, to suggest where we should be proactive in reaching out and trying to support people. And here's Huntingdon Shire, and Tony was talking about the snowball effect. Here's the kind of thing we've been talking about with Huntingdon Shire, about the kind of life events that might occur. Now, any one of these on their own, no bother, but I think the point that Huntingdon Shire make is, if you start to see 2, 3, 4 of these kind of things happening in 12 to 18 months, that might suggest that that's driving people to the edge of a crisis, and that might lead to, as it says there, poverty, debt, homelessness, and so on. So that's 3 examples of what councils were telling us about the need to try and take data out of its original setting, and to be able to create a risk index that would help you to identify people that might need help. So first, I am going to show you some of our outputs, but just to help with that, we have a video, and that's me talking just like this, talking about this kind of stuff. But in the video, it does go into more detail about what we produced. So do have a look at the video. The video talks about our website. So we have savvyuk.org, and at the website we have all of the stuff I'm about to show you, the process, the standards, and the catalogue. And we've been blogging as we go, so do keep an eye on what we do at our iStand UK site, the Savvy area, the iStand UK site. We're blogging pretty much weekly on what we're doing, what we're learning, and what feedback we're getting. So if you went to the website, you'd see it talks about a Savvy process. So this is what we mean by a repeatable self-learning cycle of a process where a council could set out to support vulnerable people. It kind of starts at what we call the purpose level, where you start to define what vulnerability you're trying to tackle and what you think the risk model would be for that. It gets into a stage of find, where you bring all the data together, try and build that risk index. The assess part is, having found people that you think are at risk, actually reach out, contact those people, listen to their stories and assess their needs. In the support phase, well, that is where you kind of assign certain needs to particular delivery organizations to actually get out and provide that support. The report phase is about, and I think Tony was talking about this area, about kind of action tracking and understanding the impact. So producing a dashboard where the data is flowing in and out from the delivery organizations to actually understand what help is being produced and whether people's needs are being fulfilled. And ultimately, you come back round to what we call the improve phase, which is all the predictive analytics, really, particularly that Huntingdonshire are a great example of, which is to, you know, how can we improve the data that we collect? How can we improve our risk modeling so that we target people better? So that's the quick version of the Savvy process, but you'll find on the website we have pages on each of these steps with each of the kind of things to do within each step. Now we do, of course, we're a standards project, so we're all about standards, and you'll find on our website plenty of stuff on standards. You won't get much out of this page, except that it'll excite you enough to go to the real thing and see what we've done. So on the left, you're getting a bit of a snapshot of one of our logical models. And then in the middle, you're seeing one of the lists, one of the definitions of one of those entities. So this is where we've spent quite a bit of time considering how data might flow around our process and defining the data structures that would support that. Finally, the third thing we've done is create what we're calling the Savvy Catalogue, which is cataloguing what actual data did councils use to tackle what type of vulnerability, what information governance did they use for that, what privacy notices did they come up with, what data protection impact assessments did they use. We're trying to bring all that together into a navigable catalogue. Now, ultimately, councils have got to take their own legal decision as to what they believe is legal to use for what purpose, but bringing it together and showing what councils have done is what councils are asking us to do, just to have some kind of resource that gives them an idea of what data is being used by who for what type of vulnerability. So we're particularly keen to work on that. So that was our phase one, and we got some nice feedback to that. I've just listed some of the people. I mean, we got feedback from councils too, but we got feedback from other parts of government as to what we're doing. And we were blogging. We didn't know the stats back to the blogs, but we did know, because we also repeated our blogs on LinkedIn, and you're seeing that we've got plenty of feedback. So people are certainly keen to engage with us as to what we're doing, and you know, we're seeing that in the comments back on our blogs and feedback. So that was our phase one. Now we get on to what we'd like to do next. Next is clearly getting out there and doing it. So that's what we're calling test and prove. We intend to work with at least two councils. One of them will be Huntingdonshire, and the other one will be North Yorkshire County Council, to actually test our process, test our standards, add to the catalogue. I mean, I think we're expecting, as we put it into that real coalface situation, that the standards will improve, the process will improve. We'll learn a lot by doing that, and we're hoping that we'll start to see some technology implementations of the standards as we do that. We're also keen to work and understand more into the analytics, the information governance, and the data ethics part of that. So we're particularly working with Manchester University on that. and we would like to work with the MHCLG economists to help us understand how what we're doing actually has an impact, a measurable impact on the ground, reducing hardship. I think we also see a great opportunity to join up standards, to join up that plumbing. So if we've got Savvy standards, then there are other standards that can join up with that. So I'm particularly thinking of Open Referral. You might know that Open Referral is another local digital units sponsored project, and that's about having a single directory of local and hyper-local services, so a directory of services. And there seems a great opportunity if Savvy is understanding the need and trying to refer it to somewhere. Well, Open Referral is those organizations and community bodies that you can refer it to. So, you know, we're keen to join up across standards as we do that. And also what we'd like to do next is just that wider engagement. There are a number of organizations knocking on our door at the moment, wanting to know more, wanting to get engaged. So we need to work with them too. In particular, so as I said, we're working with Manchester University. We've had a session with the Department for Education. They're also they have projects running to improve and deal with vulnerability of children. We're working directly with DWP. They have asked us to help them to unlock particularly universal credits data for this vulnerability work. So there's a wealth of important data in universal credits, and you know, they're keen to work with us to do that. So that's great. We want to work with the digital economy team in the Cabinet Office, because that can be also about unlocking data. We've been working with the Data Standards Authority of the Government Digital Service just to make sure that the standards that we're proposing are lined up with everybody else's. And as I said, we're already a part of the beta project from the Open Community Open Referral Group. So that's what we'd like to do next. But then what we'd like to do after what we'd like to do next is to get more ambitious with this. We do think that a framework for information governance for vulnerability is something that we'll need to publish and make that a real repeatable and well understood approach to assessing whether data can be used for vulnerability. And ultimately, Savvy could become national infrastructure, because at the moment what we're proposing is that each council is an island doing its own vulnerability work, but actually once you introduce standards, then you can share data, share analytics, and share the knowledge about what works. And ultimately this should lead to data as a service as opposed to spreadsheets being passed around. So thank you very much. I don't know if that was 15 minutes, and I don't know if you're all still there, but thank you. So do contact me. That's my email address. And as I said, do have a look at the Savvy UK website.
Thank you very much, Paul. This was a really great comprehensive overview of the Savvy project. I cannot see any questions for you posted in the chat. But since we have a couple of minutes left, I wonder if you have any tips you might want to share for delivery, during the pandemic, and also with such a large cohort of partners. Do you have any tips or insights you'd like to share with our attendees?
Right, now you cut out just at the vital moment of the first part of that question, so I didn't really hear the question.
Right, sorry, I was just saying, do you have any tips or insights you'd like to share with our attendees about delivering a project during the pandemic and with such a large cohort of partners?
Well, I think we wondered that as we started out, whether we could engage with that. Of course, one of the things that dramatically changed at the same time as we were trying to cope with the pandemic was a different way of working. And here we are all having a conference now on Teams. So we've seen Zoom and we've seen Skype and so forth. And actually, people got to grips with that very quickly. We were able to stand up workshops at really quite short notice, and everybody turned up. So I think that'll become the new way of working. So we found, even though we had a large group of people wanting to engage with us, that doing it virtually and online was so much easier. Actually, if it had been a year ago, we would have put on an event in Manchester, and we would have done one in London, and we would have had name badges, and we would have been asking people their dietary requirements. That all seems bizarre now, doesn't it? But that is what we used to do. So I think in iStand UK, we are quite used to putting on those kind of events. We've done it for years now, and I'm always amazed. You put on an event for something, and we always seem to fill a room, and that's telling you that this is a topic that people are, engaged and excited about, and seeing it, particularly how we can use data to improve all sorts of things, is very much on people's mind. So I'm not sure if I've got a tip. We were dragged along with it as the same as everybody else was, but it actually worked really well for us.
Brilliant, thank you, Paul. We don't have any more new questions.
Well, I'm seeing something from Atul.
All right, let's see. All right, yeah, there is one. How will Savvy make its voice heard and considered in an environment where so many sectors and government are starting to set out what good practice data sharing might look like?
Yeah, I think that is a challenge for us. If anything, so we are making sure that we are transparent and making a bit of noise. So we are blogging. We are knocking on the door of the Cabinet Office and those government departments, and there will be occasions, and there have been occasions, when people have said, "Oh, you're doing vulnerability too, are you?" Well, we thought. So we just need to flush that out and work with whoever and get the best of it. I don't think it's about being in the lead or whatever. It's about, ultimately our aim is to reduce hardship on the ground. So that's all we're really bothered about. We have asked to be given some kind of headspace here, because part of this project is about making relationships with other projects and trying to cope with that landscape. And if we didn't have the time and space to do that, if we were just heads down working with those two councils, by the time we got our head up again, we would have found that somebody else has done it for us. But it is a challenge, because I think, as you say, there are a number of groups and initiatives going on at the moment, some clinical, some care related. We need to find our place in that.
Brilliant, thank you, Paul. I don't see any more questions unless Atul has any more last minute questions. Brilliant. In that case, we'll just wrap up. So have a couple more slides. Thank you very much, Paul, for this. We have a couple more slides we want to share with the attendees. So really quickly, we wanted to mention that, yes, COVID-19 has put a temporary stop to our classroom-based training, but we have created a library of online courses, online training courses to support local authority staff to learn and develop their digital skills. So you can go on our website, you can see the link on your screens, and find out how we developed this this training, but also view the library. So when you go on our website, you'll see that training opportunities actually fall into 3 categories, and there are free courses that are free for all. There are courses where a fee applies. So these are open to all, but they do have an entry fee, I'm afraid. And also, finally, the courses that have a star next to them, they are funded by us, by LDCU, and they are certified courses that are paid in full by us. So that's all. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for everyone who presented. I hope you enjoyed our session. So please continue to join other sessions throughout the week. And finally, please do fill in the feedback survey that's currently in the chat. Thank you and goodbye, everyone.